you want an exposure to a market or an
Everything they need in one place.
Be the world's foremost authority on
Individuals, advisors and institutions. Hello and welcome to the Morningstar European Investment Conference. I'm Emma Wall, and here with me today is Andrei Kozyrev, former Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation. Andrei is here to tell me how, in his words, money and politics are too intimately linked in Russia. Hello, Andrei.
Hello.
So we had news yesterday that Brent crude oil had fallen to $55 a barrel off the back of the Fed announcements about rates. You've talked about how reliant the Russian economy is on the oil price, drawing parallels with sort of Soviet Union economic model of the late 80s. I mean, how similar are the two? Will Russia be able to recover without a buoyant oil price?
Yes, they are very similar, unfortunately. What we did not succeed in my time, in my government, and neither government after us was able to succeed, is to change the economic model from oil and other natural resource dependence to something like driven more like internal factors. Though there is a segment of economy which is kind of different from oil, and some investment in that field proved to be very successful until, of course, the recent period, and there will be always room for investment and for development in non-oil business also in Russia, even with the oil price as low as it is. But of course, unfortunately, the large picture depends on the oil factor, and it's still there. And a Russian budget was based on the assumption of about $100, so it's almost half income, and that of course creates considerable pressure on Russian fiscal and financial situation, and the exchange rate was hit also by sanctions, but not as much as by the oil. So if oil stands at this low level, relatively low level as it is, like 55, 60, then for a long time, then Russian economy and Russian government would be under pressure to do something.
You mentioned the sanctions there. The Russian inflation is running around 17%, and the economy is officially in recession. How much of that is due to the oil price, and how much of it is due to the sort of geopolitical things going on, that the sanctions, the things with Georgia and with Ukraine?
Well, that's very difficult actually to assess, and assessments vary. And you know, for instance, Moody's, the rating company, in their recent research or rating, they actually put the oil on this, the sanctions on the third place. So I think it's more or less correct. I would concur with that. That oil price hits heavily because of the structure of economy. And sanctions, yes, the sanctions limit ability or almost nullified ability for external sources of financing, which is, of course, heavy blow to big institutions. But let us not forget that a large part of medium-sized business in Russia, even including medium-sized banks, for instance, they never had much exposure to world financial markets. So they might be outsourced, and that they are now supported by central bank But where the central bank takes the money, the liquidity to support the banking system, again from the oil revenue. So if it goes on for long, then the financial reserves might dry out, and they are drying out. And there is also a capital flight. So these factors in the long run, it's very, very negative.
Obviously, all of this has an effect on the stock market and is creating volatility. If you look back over 3, 5, 10 years, Russia's always had quite a volatile stock market. You mentioned in your talk earlier that the Russian people themselves consider themselves European and ideally would move towards a model much more similar to those of Western economies, which have growing, more stable stock markets. Is that something you can see happening in the future for Russia, for its economy and its stock market?
Well, the emerging economies, they are marked by high volatility, and if in the West, like change of 3% is a headline news on the market, in the emerging economies, it's like
a week.
Yeah, 7% a day even is supposed to be more or less within reach, within range. So, so it's typical situation. Till what happened in Ukraine, it was more or less within emerging markets model. Now, actually, it's amazing that Russian stock market recovered considerably, despite the oil price and despite the sanctions. It's driven. It's much narrower today, and the volumes are limited, but the market looks like improving. It's speculative. That of course, it means that there are a lot of speculative forces. And Russian, part of Russian probably character, Russian mentality, you can see it in Russian literature, part of it is gambling.
So those two go hand in hand?
Yes, and Dostoevsky himself was a gambler.
Well, Andrei, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is Emma Wall for Morningstar. Thank you for watching.